right, hello and welcome to another expedition. I said that wrong on purpose, Mr. Graves. You know why?
I don't have a clue.
Because I haven't screwed it up in a long time, man. I am Chris Gazdick. He is Craig Graves. I am a mental health and substance abuse therapist, and he is a coach, an unbeatable mind coach. I have a book coming out soon at some point, Rediscovering Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self, and Craig is fully up and operational on, you gave us the website, sir?
Yeah, wininyourmind.com. W-I-N inyourmind.com.
I need to write that down on this thing here. We welcome you to Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast, where you can see the world through the lens of a coach and a therapist. Being aware that it's not the delivery of therapy services in any way, checking out the website throughatherapist'seyes.com, where you get full show transcriptions. You still have the home health supplements thing. I think that we still have that affiliate link on there, right?
Yeah,
it's in a long time.
Yeah, it's still up there. We hadn't talked about that in a while, but it's there.
Got a donation button, and we've got show groupings and categories now. We're going to have all the books that we've talked about online where you can go find them and get them through affiliate links. It's really cool stuff that we're doing on the website. So, Mr. Graves, what are we doing here? This is the human emotional experience.
Let's figure it out together.
All right. I'm excited about this one, man. What's the title? You see the title?
The fundamentals.
Yeah. The fundamentals.
The fundamentals of marriage therapy.
Yeah, the S isn't on there, audience. I screwed him up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's going to catch hell for that one.
This is episode 11, revisited and redone, man. I am excited about this because I've been wanting to do this for a while, and we just got done with the last week's episode of part 2, finishing up the kind of the racy and emotional issue of funding the police, renamed by my mind, re-equipping the police, and we had some energy there with those shows, I think, and we've had good listening numbers for those shows as evidence thereof, I do believe. But this one was kind of put in there, and I screwed up the numbers, man. I wanted this to be episode 100, but it worked out because you think of Science 101, Biology 101, right?
Mental Health 101.
Right? Marriage 101.
Yeah.
Marriage 101, man. I think so. It worked out really, really well. I refer my clients to this episode a lot. That's why it's our most listened to episode, I believe.
Is it the most listened to? I know it's at the top.
It's at the top.
There.
Yeah, I think it's definitely at the top. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure to be statistically OCD-wise correct.
It's a good topic. It's an interesting topic, and I'm looking forward to redoing it now. I really want to be clear on what each one of these things are.
Yeah.
We've done several shows on this.
We have.
And I was talking to a good friend of mine who's a listener, and he's like, yeah, I still don't know what those are. And I'm like, how do you not know what those are? Either we did a really bad job of describing or defining them, or he just didn't get it, one of the two.
No, you know what? That's a good point, Craig. And I think that, why do I always forget to start that? My stupid little timer. It's like, God, it drives me nuts. And we're supposed to know what we're doing now. We did the show at episode 11, and now we're doing it 101 because I know what we're doing. I still can't start my timer. What's up with that? Right? No, it's funny because I've had people in a therapy experience, working involved ways and in-depth ways with this topic, and it's funny to me that you actually felt that as a surprise, Craig, and I really want to see as we go along here with this topic how you are picking up and diving in your own thoughts about engulfment and abandonment, pursuing behaviors and withdrawing behaviors, because I think a lot about Dr. Spickler when he was on our show. So people have been in therapy for a long time and still struggle sometimes. They're like, what's that other one that does that's my husband and he does the what kind of behaviors? And I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you not know this 7 months into therapy when this is our primary thing? But I just don't think that people wrap their brain around it. And I've kind of been so involved in it with so many different examples that I feel like I'm starting to very much tacitly understand how this works. Remember the tacit?
Yeah,
knowledge?
Definitely.
Tell the others what I mean by that. Let me give my thoughts to jump in.
Oh man, put me on the spot.
No, man, tacit knowledge.
So I'm gonna do a terrible job at this definition, but basically tacit learning is learning on a subconscious level. Right, Chris?
Yes.
So it's taking in the information maybe more than once, And after a while, it just becomes like, I don't want to say a part of you, but it's like, when you're driving a car, you don't think about it, you just know it.
It is a part of you, yeah.
And that's what tacit knowledge is.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is emotion-focused therapy from some people. And on the show notes, man, there's going to be some good things on the show notes. Neil told me he's going to go ahead and get the handouts that I use with this, and you'll see that on our website. And they're really cool handouts. I don't use handouts really anymore, but I use these ones all the time, whether I'm doing couples counseling or individual counseling. Because, and in the show notes as well, I've got a lot of cool things that I think that you'll enjoy more than most times in the beginning to get your own research on things like John Gottman and Sue Johnson and who they are and what links are that say emotion-focused therapy are and what, attachment issues are in attachment theory. Because these are things that you can read about, and the links will really, really help you on this particular episode for sure. Because, Craig, I use this in some form or fashion, probably in most every single therapy session that I do. And I find that way because, dude, like these insecurities that we're going to talk about as a part of marriage counseling are that ingrained in our basic functions.
Yeah, and it's been interesting to learn about this concept and have conversations with you, because I've seen you point this out in other kind of relationships too, like friendships, for example. So we were having a conversation about a fellow in our mastermind group not long ago, and you were like, "Oh yeah, those are those engulfment tendencies coming out," and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty interesting." And then when you gave the example of what you meant, I'm like, "Wow, that's it."
Yeah,
that's exactly what.
Really, I barely remember that. Yeah.
Well, I won't mention any names till we're off the air, but yeah, it's just interesting that it plays out in other relationships too. Of course, we want to focus on the marriage aspect of it in tonight's show, but very interesting.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does. And the more that you get aware of this internally, you begin to really get ingrained into how I'm operating and what my behavior is and how that's working, for me as an individual, let alone, in the relationships that I got with. So let me launch with these two people that I've got some links to. John Gottman is kind of the grandfather of all this. He's a guy, if you remember, that really totally nailed what we didn't do very well in understanding in couples counseling. So couples counseling has kind of traditionally been very difficult. Recidivism rates, divorce rates sucked. I don't think we were really hitting exactly on what we needed to be hitting on when we were doing couples counseling or marriage focus. And I'm going to talk about that later on when I talk about mistakes that I used to make in couples counseling. But John Gottman wired people up, if you remember, man. So he measured people's, sweaty palms. He measured people's tear ducts. He measured people's heart rates and blood pressures and all this kind of stuff, man. And he just observed, people doing conversations in his office. I think he called it the love tank, the love tank. Thousands of couples. And what he identified was the primary foundations that we operate now, in my mind, with marriage counseling. And that is one of two primary insecurities. Okay? Abandonment or engulfment. And it all spans from those two primary insecurities. And from that, he was able to observe sets of behaviors that abandonment people do when they're looking at in conflict, in discomfort internally. They will do pursuing behaviors. They'll gain emotional safety by being close. And then the engulfment people, which is a weird fear, which is a weird insecurity. Think of engulfed by flames or engulfed by water. They have a terrible time worrying about being controlled or criticized by other people. And when they get in uncomfortable places, they will withdraw. Their behaviors will withdraw, create distance and space. So they're trying to get the same thing, ironically. They're trying to get this sense of comfort and safety, emotional safety, by backing away, by getting distance. It's not, but you can think of it as fight or flight, amygdala and the fear-based brain. It's not a fight, pursue, or flight, withdrawal. But that is the same set of biological and neurological systems that we're dealing with when people are dealing with the pains that they have with marriages. And thus is the cycle, the marriage cycle. The reason why we have conversations and fights over and over and over again, year after year after year, topic after topic, conversation after conversation. We do the same thing because we're either developing emotional safety by pursuing, getting close to you, or withdrawing, getting more distance from you. If I pursue and try to get close to you, that forces you to withdraw.
So it's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle. I'm going to repeat what you said to make sure I understand it and to make sure that the audience understands it so that my friend won't have any excuse this time for not knowing what these are. So Mr. John Gottman, I always think of John Gotti when I think
I know,
of
right?
The Teflon Don, you know?
Yeah.
Is Mr. Gottman the Teflon therapist?
No, he's not.
That joke fell flat. Anyway, so he identified these two insecurities, I think you called them.
Right.
Abandonment and engulfment. And so an abandonment individual finds their sense of security and conflict in being close and talking things out and into resolving it, you know, to being close, even physically close.
You got it.
That's what it entails. The engulfment person also finds his sense of security, or his or her sense of security, but they need space.
Right.
They need to be, they don't need to talk about it right now. They need to be on the other side of the couch or the other side of the room. And so they find their security that way. So it's a vicious cycle. The abandonment person pursues, the engulfment person withdraws, and it just kind of goes into this cycle.
Round and round and round she goes.
Round and round and round she goes. Right.
You got it.
Okay, good.
You know, you got it. And it's a very powerful, visceral thing that's going on that's not thought about. You know, attachment theory is a big part of all of this, which Sue Johnson is the lady that got links on our notes that kind of, I almost feel like John Gottman did some good old serious science to this thing, and then Sue sort of clinicalized it and emboldened a practice around it called emotion-focused therapy. And so the idea, and I want to highlight, it's a great thing to go to if you're, you know, for a marriage workshop. It's called a Hold Me Tight workshop. You really want to see our website in the show notes with this one, guys, because there's some really good stuff about all these links and all these things that you'll see on our show notes.
The Hold Me Tight workshop. Who hosts that? How do they find that?
It's a workshop, I think, that was developed by Sue Johnson, and then it just has different facilitators throughout, you know, really, I guess, the world.
Oh, interesting.
Hold Me Tight.
Something you could do?
If you Google Hold Me Tight, I would need to get certified, but yes, I could do it. But I'm not certified to do it, so therefore I can't do it.
We need to get you certified.
I don't want to pay money to get certified and stuff that I do all day, every day anyway. Just saying. Yeah, I'm curious what you'll find. He's going to Google Hold Me Tight.
So it looks like Miss Johnson has a book too, right?
Oh yeah. They got lots of material out. Lots of material for you to dig into. Gottman is a preeminent authority on a lot of things that they write about. And his wife, I did a training with, virtually, but I did a training with the Gottmans and got to watch them and talk with them and stuff.
So Hold Me Tight is a book by Sue Johnson. There's also workshops. If you Google Hold Me Tight workshop, then you'll find information on that.
Local Bayou. It's based on attachment theory. I'm not going to go long into this at all, but you need to understand the power of what happens with attachment theory as being a part. It's a therapy modality, right? It's a part of what happens. There's actually something called reactive attachment disorder in our field. It's a terrifying. You know, you think of separation anxiety. It's a difficult, very emotionally challenge that people get into with attachments. So I don't know where Ainsworth and Bowlby kind of said this. Attachment is a deep and enduring emotional bond that connects one person to another across time and space. This came from an article I saw, I think.
So I'm sorry, go ahead and finish up.
Okay. The power of this needs to be understood in way of, I really want you to understand the systems that are going on inside your emotion and in your brain is what I'm really wanting to highlight here. And attachment theory is a big part of that. Now, when we did this year or two ago, Craig, and we talked about the Russian orphanages.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's how powerful this is. Okay? I wanted to get that particular study, and I spent some time looking, and I didn't even find it, right? When I was doing some Googling about this, here's what I found. It wasn't even just in Russia, because Russia's gotten a bad name with a lot of the issues they had in their orphanages and such. But this said is in the beginning of the 20th century in the US and the UK, the death rates among infants placed in orphanages, nurseries, and fondling hospitals were, in some cases, close to 100%. Dude, did you hear that?
100% death rate? What did you say?
I'm going to read it again, and I got the link where I saw this. It says, at the beginning of the 20th century, in the U.S. and the UK, the death rates among infants placed in orphanages, nurseries, and fondling hospitals, is what they called them, fondling hospitals, were in some cases close to 100%.
Wow. That's incredible.
If that's true, like, wow is right, man. And the idea here is that most of the deaths were not due to starvation or disease, but most to severe emotional and sensory deprivation. In other words, a lack of love. Right? These babies were fed, they were medically treated, they were absolutely deprived of any important stimulation, especially touch and affection. You don't think affection is important in a relationship? You're crazy. Because literally, it can be said that babies, when they don't get it, die from it. That's powerful.
Wow. So I wonder how that affects us as adults.
It does. And if you think it doesn't, again, you're crazy. You know?
Yeah. Wow.
You're crazy. It's a very powerful reality when we look at even some of the biological aspects of what loves and hugs and touches does. You know, dogs help us to feel better. You know why? Because they're crawling in our lap and they're sitting and we're petting them. It has a desensitization process that goes on even neurosympathetically in our systems.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know people live longer that have pets.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of the stuff that you talk about where you're breathing. Your breathing impacts your body tremendously. Well, you breathe more deeply and slowly when you're in a calm emotional state and you're being touched. Touch is a very... Jesus in the Bible talked about touching. We can go on and on and on about the power of this stuff.
There's actually people who are...
healing touchers.
Paid snugglers now.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
I've heard that.
How bizarre is that?
It's... You know, in this context, it's not. You know why people go to, prostitutes oftentimes? Not for sex. They go to discuss and talk and connect.
Wow.
That's why they go a lot of the time.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, Chris. I remember reading about Tiger Woods when he went through his scandal. You know, some of the women that he was with, he just wanted to watch a movie,
Yeah.
That's interesting.
The power of this occurred to me in Love and Logic. Remember, this is part of the trifecta. You remember that?
The trifecta for Love and Logic?
No. The trifecta in what I think are really effective things for their respective stuff. Dave Ramsey's stuff I talked about, Love and Logic for parenting, and this is EFT for marriage. It's part of the trifecta. Gottman nailed it. Right? Mm-hmm. So in Love and Logic, there's a lot of overlap. They talk about touching your teenager. I'm like, what? No, they say, yeah. Because what happens a lot of times with your teenagers is if you don't touch them, you don't hug them, you know how you wrestle and you play with your little, 8-year-old daughter, you're hugging them and squeezing them and whatever. Well, they start doing, breast development and biological, stuff. I can't hug them. I can't talk with them as much. I need to treat them differently. My teenage boys can't stand to be hugged. Well, the interpretation is if you don't touch them or whatnot when they're in their teenage years, they interpret they're not loved as much.
So even if they don't want you to, you should still give them a hug.
To a certain extent, I try to find ways that I can hug my kids. I absolutely do.
Interesting.
My older one, he's 19, is much more difficult, but still.
Yeah,
I try.
That's interesting, man.
I try.
Yeah.
Right? So the whole point here is Gottman identified very intense, and Sue Johnson clinicalized this, and I gave you my little bit of my elevator variety version of what the emotion-focused therapy models are. Identifying abandonment, identifying withdrawal, identifying abandonment, and identifying pursuing behaviors with abandonment, and identifying engulfment and withdrawing behaviors that happen with engulfment. And you back that up and used your excellent own words for it. It's awesome. Guess what my mistakes were in therapy? Right? I absolutely was screwing up, I feel like, for many, many years. Doing a good job, probably an average, if not better than average even, but I was missing the point because I would talk about, the issues of communication all the time. That was my staple. Communicate better. And I can't tell you, still, people come into me in therapy and they're like, we don't communicate. We need to learn how to communicate better. Now I say, no, you don't. Their eyes roll. They look at me like, what are you talking about, man? Literally, this happens, Craig. This happens in my office. And I'll go through and I'll explain a little bit of this. And I'll say, you know what? When you're worked up, it's very different. You've talked about getting married. You've talked about your first budget. You've talked about, child planning and parenting and, different successes that you've had with very difficult communications. They may have talked about racism before. May have conversations about defunding the police. These tough, emotional conversations, and maybe you have fights with them. Because when you get hot, you can't even talk about whether you're going to get Coke or Pepsi at the grocery store. That's not a communication problem. It's not difficult to decide that, But when you're emotional, when you're in these states, man, people cannot talk about the most basic things. When you're calm, you and I have had many conversations about it. I don't get my emotions triggered with you. You think I'm able to do that at home all the time with my kids or my wife?
Nope.
Nope. Whole nother level there when it comes to that. So I would talk about communication, and I would talk about love languages, and I would talk about, conflict resolution. And I have specific strategies that I still do take people through. Step by step, kind of how to do these things sometimes. But you know what I was missing? I tried to figure out the foundations. I tried to figure out the patterns. I tried to figure out what are the things, and I would tell people for years, what are the patterns? We want to keep them, we want to change them, we want to lose them. How do we want to work? But you know what I was missing? The real foundation. If you do not figure out how to help somebody manage this cycle that we just talked about effectively, internally, you're not going to deal with communication. You're not going to deal with conflict resolution. You're not going to deal with a lot of the things that you hear from churches and gender differences and understanding the purposes of your relationship in your life or all these types. You're not going to deal with it. You're not going to get to much of anything. Because when you try to deal with those things and your brain is on fire with your amygdala to the point that you're in fight or flight mode, you could pick up a car. Right? How are you going to work on any of those things when that's the way you're feeling? I don't care if you know your love language and upside down one intimately well, and your partners. A lot of people don't even know their own. I don't care if you know all that super well. If you don't understand what's going on with these very powerful insecurities, they will dethrone you and throw you into a whole nother world, and you won't be able to talk about Coke or Pepsi at the grocery store.
So how do you step people through that how do you step them through that? I mean...
Oh, we got a segment there. Yeah, we're going there.
Okay.
We are going there. We are definitely going there. I don't know if I want to go there next. I'm thinking of a friend that always tells me, Craig, ask that question. You don't want to go away from that. We're gonna end there. That whole segment that you see on the notes there, yeah, we're gonna hit that. I think I'm gonna keep on this stream and finish the cycle. Because getting back to the cycle, you got to know it intimately well. Abandonment and engulfment. Okay, so what are the choices in marriage? How do we go? What's the potentials? It's not very hard to figure out. You got three potential types of relationships, right?
Yeah. You got abandonment, engulfment, or abandonment, engulfment.
Right? So what happens with abandonment and abandonment?
Yeah, I was going to ask how often you see the same characteristic.
We do. I'd love to see some breakdown, and I'd love to ask Gottman themselves.
Because I didn't think you saw a lot of that. Am I wrong in saying that?
Withdrawal. Engulfment, I don't see very often. Yeah, I've seen it once.
That's an interesting thing.
Literally, I've been doing therapy for a long time. I've seen it once.
That's kind of funny. Even that makes sense, right? Yeah, I don't want to be near you. I don't want to be near you either. All right.
No,
see you later.
Let's characterize that interesting, right? It's, well, I love you. You do your thing. You do you. Oh, I love you too. You do your thing. You do you.
Well, I figure you drift apart. That's what I'm saying.
And both people do you.
That was my point. They would eventually drift apart.
But what the reason why I was recharacterizing that is it's out of love. It's like it's not mean. It's not like detached. They love each other. They want to be together. They're really committed to each other. They want them to be well. So go to your corner and go be well.
Yeah.
And that's what the other person's saying. Oh, I love you too. Go be well.
So do you have statistics around the
I don't have
success
specifics.
rate of marriages who were...
And go, the different type. No, I don't have those kind of breakdowns. And
Well, I imagine the abandonment would be an interesting situation, right? Good grief, if I never leave the house. Oh, baby, I love you. Oh, I love you too.
Right.
I love you so much. I love you so much.
Absolutely, man. It's an absolute love fest, man. At the beginning, and then when it's not so much of a love fest in the fighting times, it's a nightmare. A nightmare.
Well, describe that scenario for us.
That therapy session is Chris Gassick is very quiet, just playing a referee.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I can see that now.
Right.
They're both talking their asses off, and you can't get a word in, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Literally.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. Okay.
It's happened a few times, and actually the one time that it happened, I was newer into identifying these things, and I was just like, I felt like run over. I was like, what just happened? And I was like, oh my God, I know what just happened. That's what he was talking about. Abandonment, pursue. Holy crap.
So the cycle is it safe to say that it's abandonment engulfment?
The cycle is whenever you get into your emotional state, you do what you do to gain emotional safety in your marriage, right? If that's withdrawal, then both people happen to be doing the same thing. If that's abandonment, then both people happen to be doing the same thing. But an overwhelmingly majority of the time, it really is that abandonment and engulfment combo. It's opposites attract, and it doesn't matter which one goes first, but once one person really gets triggered and tripped out, then the other person gets triggered and tripped out usually.
So you're saying is it mostly relationships that you see or one or the other?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Opposites attract.
It's opposites attract. Because, it works, man. I mean, it works. In a healthy way, it's not, I don't know how much we're going to have an opportunity to get this. I'll say to the listening audience, we did do one show in depth on abandonment and another show in depth on engulfment. The whole show was each one of those. And I don't think I'll do that for quite a while. I wanted to do this one over again, but that one we won't do for quite a while, I think. So go back and find that one, because I'll talk about in that particular show, probably not this one, about abandonment insecurity skill sets and engulfment insecurity-based skill sets. I think that's a term I coined, honestly.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because there's actually some really cool things that come out of each individual insecurity. And I think we'll come back to that a little bit in this particular episode. But
so you're going to write a book on those topics?
I very well might.
You should.
It very well might. It will be a part of my marriage book that I'm kind of popping around with right now.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So what are you hearing so far? Where are we at? Help me kind of get clear in your brain.
Yeah, I think I'm on board with you. I think we gave a good definition. Abandonment is the insecurity where the person wants to talk and be close. Engulfment is the insecurity where the person needs space and doesn't need to talk or be close. And then we talked about the different cycles of that, the different combinations of that. And you were telling us about how you missed the boat with your counseling up until you found out about this foundational element of marriage counseling.
Right. So perfect. Yeah, we're in good shape there. I wanna highlight a little bit of the, you were talking about our mastermind buddy, Craig, and I want to dig into. I'm not gonna do the whole show on it, but like we did effectively when we did one on abandonment and one on engulfment, because these really drive to daily behavior. You don't realize it, but you get what I call layering effect. Okay? And this is a good time to cover this too. A lot of people are always like, well, I'm not sure which one I am, and I do both. I hear that all the time. Till we really get into looking at the patterns and digging into that a little bit to kind of figure out where somebody's lying, generally you really are on one side or the other, and you don't generally switch sides, and I call it the razor's edge, right? So you fall on one side at birth somewhere. Is it biological, tabula rasa, you learn at birth and you move forward? I don't really know where it comes from, but you seem like you fall on one side or the other, and then you kind of go to an extreme at some point to that you stop moving to extremes. And what I mean by that is the opposite seem to attract, right? So 100 is going to be with a 0, which is impossible to be 100 and 0. 49 to 1 is abandonment. 51 to 100 is engulfment. So an 80 seems to match up with a 20.
All right, you lost me somewhere there.
Did you?
The scale. Okay. What's the deal with the scale?
So yeah, I thank you for that, because I covered a couple things at once, and there's a lot to cover with this. First of all, people think that this is a gender-oriented thing, and it's completely not. Can we just totally misspell that?
Okay, yeah. Oh, so you're thinking, the man's more engulfment and the girl's more abandonment.
Right. That is not the case. But then people oftentimes have questions, where do I do both. Where do I fall? I don't know where I fall. I do both behavior. And this is where I say the razor's edge, right? You fall on the razor's edge and you're on one side or the other. And as you go to the poles, it's severe abandonment or severe engulfment. And I kind of think of it as a rating scale, right? 51 to 100.
I see what you're saying.
100 is severe abandonment, and 51 is mild abandonment.
Yeah, okay.
49 is mild engulfment. And 1 is severe, engulfment.
Yeah, okay. I'm with you.
Yeah. And an 80 matches with a 20, a 60 with a 40, and so on.
Got it.
Right? So that's the way we kind of see this. I see this pairing out. And so when you look at these behaviors, you'll really see day-to-day influences. And throughout your life, I call this a layering effect. So you fall on the razor's edge, you go on one side or the other, and where do you land? Well, different life experiences kind of push you in one direction or the other, and when you fall on one side, you have almost a confirmation bias psychologically. So when you're a little child, you'll find this event, and then this event confirms that fear, and then this event confirms that fear, and you literally have event after event after event that kind of layers on top of each other. I'm really going to get left. I'm going to be abandoned. Happened in this moment, happened in that moment, happened again. And it doesn't have to be like a severe abandonment of any sort. Or in the opposite way, controlled or criticized. I got a critical parent. Well, if you have a critical parent, you would find typically that you have an engulfment tendency, right? Not always. Not always. But that's what's funny to me. When people ask, well, where does this come from? Is it my parents? Was it a kid? I don't really know, but families will have multiple kids, and different kids they're on different sides of the equation. I look and see my total kids right now. One's on one side, one's on the other. Why is that? I have no idea. No idea.
Interesting.
Same family.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
So do you think it's some kind of genetic thing, or do you think it's the way that that we interpret the world as kids? Because you really could interpret the same situation.
Yeah.
In different ways. Let's say you had a father who was standoffish and didn't give you a whole lot of love and affection. You may have one sibling who sees that and says, "Well, I need to be close to somebody. I need to be close. I don't want to be abandoned like my father's abandoned me." And you have the other kid may say, "Well, you know what? I need to protect myself and not get pulled into that situation. So I just need to back off of it."
Right.
Instead, so that kid could, and you have two different kids who interpret the same situation in different ways through a different lens.
That's really cool, Craig.
Yeah. You're
really on something there, and that is I'm going to listen to this back, because this is a really important show to me, because I use this stuff all the time with people, and that. Say that again in sort of shorter terms.
Well, I was just saying, what if you had two brothers or a brother and whatever, two kids, and the father was standoffish.
Yeah.
And so one kid sees that and says, "You know what? I need to be close to somebody. I need to be loved, and I don't need to have that happen to me in the future. I need to, I need to have that." And they become the abandonment kid.
Yeah.
The other kid sees the standoffish father who doesn't show a lot of love, and he says, like, you know what? I'm not going to let anybody else hurt me that way either. And so I'm just going to create this standoffish
And withdraw.
Yeah, and withdraw.
Yeah, I think you're dead on there, and I know to a certain extent maybe that doesn't make any daggum sense, because it's kind of like, well, why would you do that and why would you do the other? But I think it's absolutely possible, and from that goes what I call a layering effect. So once you do that, maybe that's like the initial event. Think of it in simple terms. That's the initial event. And then some other event happens later on with your kindergarten teacher or whatever. Or later on with your 4th grade teacher, and then your girlfriend, and then whatever. And honestly, on a simple day-to-day basis with your bus school driver, and then your teacher, and then your mom, and then your brother, and then your neighbor, and then your preacher, and all these things within the course of the first week. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just layers on top of each other and builds your experience of the way you're experiencing the world with primary foundational insecurities.
Yeah. Like a layering effect. I think
Right.
most of our preconceived notions happen earlier in life, right? But I think you probably could.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. So I pull this out all the time in my office. It's one of these handouts, right?
Oh, man. I think I remember the handout from
You
last
do,
time.
don't you?
Yeah. I didn't want to do that, did I? Last time?
Oh, yeah,
gotta
no,
get me
you
to take
didn't.
some
Yeah,
quiz.
this one you didn't want to do. Yeah, he's like, that's awesome. Maybe he'll do it this time.
Put me on the spot.
Yeah. Well, this other handout is actually a little quicker that I use, Craig, more regularly, because it nails very clearly what I hear in my office when you have, direct fears, coming out. I'll actually hear these statements. And this is what I'll put you on the spot with, Craig, for sure. I'm going to read set number 1 and set number 2. And all I want you to think of is which one is which. Is this abandonment people that want to get close and have pursuing behaviors? Or is this the fears of engulfment people that have withdrawing behaviors?
Okay.
So these are all fear statements.
Yeah, I can play along with that.
If you're being insecure and you're saying these things, which one are you? So I can't count on you. You're not there for me. I feel all alone. I fear that you're going to leave me. Seems like what I want isn't important to you. Seems like what I need isn't important to you. If I'm saying those things, and those are the things that I'm fearful about, which one am I, says you?
Yeah, you're the abandonment guy.
Right.
Saying that, right?
You didn't struggle too hard, did you? You should see his grin. He's like,
No, I've done a lot of thought and
yeah.
Not research, but I've done a lot of thought about this since we talked last. So
Right.
I feel like I got a pretty good handle on it.
Well, we've talked about it several times. And so the next set, number 2, right? If you're thinking these things and fearful of these things, I fear that if I get too close, you're going to criticize me. I can't stand you controlling me. You're so controlling. I feel like I need my space. I feel like I could lose myself. I don't even know who I am. You've taken that away from me. I feel like you're in far more control of this whole relationship, or you're trying to get more control. You're a control freak, right? I feel overwhelmed by all your needs and all your reactions and all your emotions. You're too much. Which one are you?
That's an engulfment person. I'm fighting back the laughter because these questions, they just sound so whiny. And I mean, both sides, really.
Yeah, well, they are.
When you were reading the abandonment side, I'm like, geez, what a wimp. But when I'm reading the engulfment side, it's like the same thing.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Right. But it's funny because I hear people saying these things, and if they're not even using those exact words, they're absolutely saying meaning, the exact meaning statements.
Yeah.
And but it's funny, man. I will sit there in therapy sessions before I even started an assessment. Honestly, I'm sitting there in individual therapy sessions, and I hear people saying this stuff about their spouse.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wow. That's one off the daggum sheet. I don't even have to think about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's funny, man. That's funny.
And the thing of it is it's also super painful. Right? I feel like I can do a comedy show by mimicking the arguments people have.
Dude,
You
I'm
never
sure
let
you.
me say anything when we're talking. You don't even let me finish the sentence. Okay, Mr. Engulfment. Well, you don't even care what I say. I've told you 5 times in the last week, and you ain't listening. All right, Miss Abandonment.
That is funny. Yeah, you could do a comedy show because I'm laughing at these questions, man.
You know?
Yeah, it's funny stuff.
But keep in mind, like, when this is in context of, like, when you're really hurting, you'll go to these statements. And any one of these statements that I just read off this little thing are all lies, actually. They're all lies. None of them are true.
Well, maybe they are,
No, generally speaking, when you say I'm married to you and I can't count on you, come on, man. Do they work? Do they make $1? If they don't work and they're in home, are they washing a dish?
Well, maybe not.
Maybe. I mean, it's
Scumbag.
pretty hard to not count on anything, particularly when you're newlywed married. And if that's the case, you probably don't need to be married.
That's hilarious.
It's funny because you go back and forth. I can't count on you, abandonment. Fear that you're getting too close, you're going to criticize me, withdrawal. You're not there for me. Well, abandonment, engulfment. I feel like I need my space. You can go back and forth with these arguments and these fear-based things. But ultimately, what people want is the exact same thing.
Yeah.
An intimately close, and this is the golden egg. This is, what did I call it? The golden goal, the golden egg in the middle of the space between a man and a woman in a union. And by the way, I do feel the same thing happens in same-gendered relationships, by the way.
I'm sure it does.
Same exact stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Right? The golden space in between that everybody universally pretty much wants is an emotionally safe, close, intimately close relationship. But it's got to be emotionally safe. And that's so hard to maintain if you're able to get it in the first place for a moment. Emotionally safe space where you're intimately close, like, man. And if you're pining for your neighbor's relationship, that you see them holding their hands and being all lovey and buying the Hallmark cards and whatever, understand they lose it like that when the topics start flying.
Yeah, that's one of the things I've learned in life is, you can't count on the social media pics and, all that stuff.
No.
I remember, right before my wife and I got divorced, we were in somewhere and we were doing something, the kids were with us and somebody commented, "Oh, you guys have such a beautiful family," and
yeah,
it was not that way at home. But so, yeah.
I remember you said this before when we were talking. You're like, "Oh, yeah, we look nice. We're pretty people. We got a nice, awesome family." And then we go home and we're bitching and yelling. It ain't pretty.
Yeah, it's true. This concept, man, I really do enjoy these conversations about this. And I see it so much now. And asking yourself these questions that Chris just went over, is this going to be on the site?
Yeah, this is an article he's pointing out, audience, that is a really cool tool that we're not going to have time to go over it today, Craig, but I'll let you comment on it in a second.
Yeah, I was just going to point out.
Well, go ahead in a second. But this is an article that you'll find on the site that is a really helpful tool that I actually found. And I kind of want to do a blog on this one. I've already got a sketch on my own version of, like, this and that, abandonment list of daily behaviors and engulfment list of daily behaviors. And it's an article that I found that totally helps you to describe what I'm only being able to touch on with this segment of our conversation today.
Yeah. Chris, you should really think about that marriage book next because, what's the divorce rate? 50%? If you can help people with this kind of stuff, man, it would be huge. But, going through these questions is what I wanted to point out because when we did the first show, when we did 11, I was in a relationship with a lady and I was telling her about these two concepts and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely abandonment."
Right.
And then when we went through the questions, she's like, "Oh my God, I'm definitely engulfment."
Right. Right.
So, you might think you're one or the other and it turns out that you're not. Is that a true statement?
Absolutely. See that often.
Yeah.
I see that often.
Yeah. So I would go through these questions if you're interested in finding out which side of this you fall on. Or maybe you just listen to the questions Chris just read and you can hear your own voice.
Over and over and over again.
It could be a bit of a shock.
Yeah, and and when you go through this article, you'll find what the article is again is sort of contrasting the abandonment and engulfment on the list A and the list B, sort of like I did on my little handout that Actually, Jeff Shook created it, I must say.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah.
Shook.
Not this article, but this handout, I believe.
Yeah.
Anyway, the thing here is that you'll have checks on both sides of that page, right? You'll have some characteristics on the abandonment, but you're going to find an overwhelming majority on one side or the other.
Oh, wow. So it's like a page and a half here. I
Oh, yeah.
didn't see the other pages.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
It's an awesome article, and you read down through it, then you'll really enjoy kind of trying to figure out you'll figure out where's your partner.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Which side are they on?
You know, I think I was afraid to say it last time, but I'd like to think I've had some personal growth in the last couple of years. But I'm on the abandonment side, man.
We've both owned that.
That's where I land. You know, I think I didn't want to take the test last time because I didn't want to admit that. But I mean, it is what it is, right?
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And we've both admitted that. I think, I'm definitely on the abandonment side. And what's funny is, you got two dudes that are supposed to be like, oh, I'm not emotional, I'm tough. Yeah. I've got my man cave.
Yeah, I'm rolling jiu-jitsu later.
Right. I'll kick his ass.
Yeah. Nobody messes with me. Oh, baby, please don't leave me.
Right.
Are you going to be here when I get back?
I'm not important enough to you. Oh gosh, the insecurities suck, but they're real. Oh man, do you want to know what we do in a therapy practice when I'm really working with people with these ins and outs and trying to figure out the marital cycles? I want you to maybe kind of get into my therapy office with me for just a minute, right? I want you to get into my therapy office and kind of understand what it is that I'm going to do with you when you come to marital counseling. Sounds interesting?
Yeah, man. I can't wait to hear more.
Right.
You talking to me or the audience?
You, man.
Oh, man.
You.
Where were you 5 years ago, brother?
I know. Right. I know. It's funny that you say it that way, honestly, Craig, because, I've said this thousands of times, too, in my personal and professional life. You know what kind of couples counseling I would like to do?
What's that?
Pre-marital counseling. Can I say that again?
Yeah.
Pre-marital counseling. You know how often I get to do that?
Probably never.
Rare at best. I'm actually doing one right now. I'm in a therapy experience where he came to me because he wanted to, prepare for being married. And I thought that was the coolest ass thing in a while, man.
Dude, that's a great idea.
Yes.
That's a very good idea.
Yes.
And, I had a friend who went through a divorce. And there was some kind of marriage course, premarital course or whatever it was. And so he lived his life for a while. He decided he was ready for another relationship. And he went to a course like this marriage. It was a course. It was
okay. Yeah.
It's everybody sitting in a circle, whatever. He was the only person there without anybody.
Wow. Right.
And they're like, hey, where's your girlfriend? Where's your fiance? He's like, I don't have one. And he's like, well, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, someday I want to have one. Someday I want to be married, So he was prepping.
That is fantastic.
Yeah, he was prepping for his situation.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that is absolutely... Because, listen, one of the things that happens is we do a blame game. What do we do in a therapy experience, especially with couples, is highlight, honestly, the goal of realizing this is an internal experience, not a external experience. The thing that's so cool about your friend who's going to a couples counseling seminar before he's even married is he's recognizing that far before I meet my spouse, I'm doing things and wanting to get grounded in myself internally so that when I meet her, or in the female's case, him, I'm more prepared internally with me to be there for my partner.
That's exactly what he said,
Yeah.
Pretty much.
That is...
And he did meet somebody and is happily married now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how cool that is.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how cool that is.
Yeah, I think it was awesome too.
Because that's honestly item number one in a therapy office. I'm really trying to hammer the idea and help a person understand that their internal experience is very different than, what's actually going on. Because you'll see something that happened, and you'll see that, my husband did this and this is the way I felt, and then you blame them. You blame them for the way that you feel, and that's not the way to go. There's a locus of control issue here, right? So item number A in a therapy experience is we're kind of trying to highlight a locus of control. You can control, speaking of the abandonment or the engulfment feared people, you control me. No, you know what you can control? You can't control the issues of what somebody else is doing. You can control only what's going on in your own internal experience. So stop worrying about the other person's doing.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. And I actually wrote that down as we were talking earlier. It's kind of coming back to emotional control, right?
Oh yeah.
You have to be able to control your emotional state. So if you are either one of these two things, then you can overcome the need to get all needy or to push back and deal with the situation from an emotional standpoint in your own self, right?
Absolutely. I mean, so you're taking me away from this section and the last section, and I'm going to come back to what we do in a therapy office and go to that because you're right on. What are the challenges, right? If you're trying to figure out, what am I trying to do differently, like you just talked about, the individual behavior that you're trying to change for an abandonment-based person is learn how to shut up.
Right.
Learning how to sit down and relax and just let problems go. Not everything needs to be talked about, for goodness sakes. Abandonment people want to work it out and talk, and let's talk again and talk some more. Let's have a marathon. Here's a hint. If you've ever done a text bomb, chances are you might be abandonment person. I need to do that. What's a country song guy? The redneck guy. If chances are, if you've ever had a mule and you've had milk out of him, you're a redneck. You know what I'm talking
Jeff
about?
Foxworthy.
Jeff Foxworthy.
Yeah, yeah.
I need to do a marital skit.
I was going to say the country singer redneck. That kind of narrows it down.
Yeah, right. So the challenges for the engulfment person, you have to have an opinion and express them often. Express your desires and preferences and shoot your emotion out at people multiple times. When engulfment people like to say, Craig, they're like, oh, well, I tell people what I'm thinking. I tell people what I want. They're not listening to me. Once in 10 years. An abandonment person is going to make sure you know what I want when I want it. Mm-hmm. There's not going to be any doubt because you've heard it 5 times this week. An engulfment person is going to be like, well, I told you when we were newlyweds. We're 20 years married now, but you should know that I want what I want. So those are the challenges. Abandonment people tend to be very active with emotion. They tend to be very goal-directed. They tend to be chatty. They have, problem solvers. Engulfment people, they have a tendency to be very patient and flexible, and they're very kind of oriented towards, being very easygoing and wonderful coworkers. But, honestly, you just don't really know what they're thinking. You don't have any idea where they're really at. They don't really make it clear. They're hard to read. Abandonment people are like just emotions right on their sleeve. It's not hard when they walk in the room, So those are some of the challenges, and so those are some of the tendencies. So let's get back to the therapy office, because item number 1, we want to highlight locus of control. It's an internal issue. It's not an external issue. That's what you can control and manage anyway, and that's where the responsibility lies in the person. What are you experiencing in this situation? Back to like your kid situation that you're awesomely nailed 40 minutes ago. That kid is responsible for interpreting, what did you call the dad, the withdrawn dad or whatever?
Yeah.
That kid is responsible internally for what they experienced. It isn't the dad. Both kids experienced it completely differently. Right? And that's a great way to demonstrate that through what you said earlier. So B, prevent the blame game in marital cycles. We do not want to get into you're to blame. You did this, that's why I felt the way I felt. No, you felt the way you felt in internal experiences is your responsibility. That's something to totally change. I mean, that totally changed the perspective.
Is that an abandonment engulfment issue or just an issue?
Universal.
Right, I was thinking that was,
Yeah, universal.
Yeah.
We really like to think, well, I'm only quiet and you're not easy to talk to. Therefore, I don't tell you what I'm thinking because when I do, you yell at me or you act like an asshole. Well, no, don't put that on me.
Right.
You put that on yourself. Well, I'm so edgy with you when you come home because you don't even talk to me. You don't even deal with anything. So sure, I'm all, mad and whatever. No, don't put that on me. That's the way you're feeling, and you're acting that way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So you really got to be preventative in your own internal self, you know, blame. So let's put those two together. First thing is internal locus of control. Don't think that it's outside of you that causes you to feel this way, and then avoid the blame game when you feel that way. You can't look at the other person and blame them.
So
right?
We're focusing on us, internal.
Yep.
And then we're not playing the blame game.
Right. And then C, really, we're trying to get as close to real-time recognition of this in the first place.
Okay.
You know?
Define that a little bit more.
Real-time recognition of this is really, really difficult. That means you and I, Craig, are in a disagreement right now. You just looked at me in a snotty way and kind of shook your fist at me because I'm doing a bad job with this recording, and I'm kind of like all weirded out and kind of like, oh my God, you know, what did I do wrong? Craig's mad at me. Oh, wait a minute. I'm doing a good job. It's not my fault for, you know, doing this. I wonder what's up with Craig if he's edgy. Now I can get outside of myself, right? Now I can say, well, what's happening here that Craig's, you shook your fist at me, man. Now instead of shutting down like an engulfment might and pull back and just maybe stop doing the show altogether, I'll step up and say, hey, Craig, you look upset. I mean, what's up?
So you could also, that's kind of synonymous with awareness, right? Awareness of the situation.
Mindfulness.
Yeah.
Awareness.
Okay.
Being in the moment.
Yeah, that's what I just wrote down, awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, because listen. That's the goal. You're probably not going to get there. I'm not there. I don't know when I'm triggered all the time. And remember a little bit ago, I claimed that I have a little bit of a tacit understanding of this stuff. I've really been working with this a lot for quite a few years now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when I go into this. I go home and I get worked up and something's irritating me, and you know, somebody looks at me cross or something, they're like, what's wrong with you? My wife will say, what's your problem? I'm like, I don't have a problem. What's your problem? Half hour later, I'm like, holy shit, I walked home and I was like acting like an asshole. Why? I didn't even know. You don't know when you're in a spot a lot of the times when you go in. If you can get close to figuring it out 5 hours after you went in, that's pretty good. Hopefully you're not still fighting. Literally. Right? So when you can identify this, boom, in the moment, you did yourself and your partner, by the way, a super good job. That's the standard. It's hard.
Chris, how do you think you develop that awareness to do it real time? I mean, that's a skill, right?
That's a skill.
Yeah. We'll talk about that one at a different time. I think that could be a deeper discussion.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe so. Because that takes a lot. I mean, I'm working with therapy and people either individually or maritally on these things in a while, and we're still getting through to trying to identify. And it'll be even like, what, a week later, they come see me and they tell me about an argument. I'm like, okay, well, when'd you go into your spot? They're like, oh, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, we're going to come back to that in another show.
You know?
How to build that awareness and emotional control.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah. Write that down.
Yeah, we'll integrate some of the stuff I'm doing with that and have a good show.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Craig's going to develop that one. Hold him to it, audience. Listen. Understanding the importance of internal rather than external locus of control. Don't blame the other person. Get close to real time as possible. Oftentimes in sessions, I made the point, I'll actually interrupt the people's conversations pretty actively. I mean, they'll be in some discussion, whatever. I'm like, yo, stop and freeze right there. What did you just say, and how does that relate possibly to abandonment or engulfment? And they'll be like, and then we'll go into it. The topic of what they were talking about doesn't even matter.
So
stop right there. And what did you say? What does that mean to you? What's going on there?
Yeah. So one of the things we develop through a mindfulness practice is the witness, so we can observe our thoughts in real time. So what you're really doing there is acting as a witness for these couples who are having these discussions in your office.
That's exactly right.
Very interesting.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Very, very interesting.
Usually, audience, if you've picked up and following us or whatnot, something just clicks with Mr. Graves when he says, very interesting.
Well, these EFT discussions, man, have been the biggest takeaway I've had from our show.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting. I can see it in people. I can see those tendencies in myself. It helps me deal with people in all kinds of relationships better.
Listen,
I mean, my kids, I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see my kids which pattern they fall into.
Yeah.
It's really good stuff, and I really hope you guys take it in. Listen to this show more than once if you need
Seriously.
to hit that tacit knowledge. And so it's just things click when we have these.
I love it, Craig, that you say that, because honestly, when I came across this stuff, I mean, dude, it made me a much better therapist and a much better person, husband and wife. I still suck at a lot of that, but much better nevertheless, right?
It's all about growth. It's not a destination. It's a journey.
That's what they say. Number 4 is I dispelled the myth that we're going to eradicate these tendencies. I would love to be able to do it, but at some point early on when I'm working with people, I'm telling them, look, we're not going to get rid of this. That's not the goal. Can you imagine being able to be successful in figuring out how to get rid of an insecurity as a therapist?
It's just like you're always going to be in one of the two categories.
Yeah.
It's just how you manage it. It's going to be the difference.
If I can move you from an 80 through getting insightful and working on some strategies and managing your emotion, getting mentally tough, as Mr. Coach Greggs would say, right? And I move you down to a 72, an 80 down to a 72, 51 is the best, ultimately, a self-actualized person. Well, that's great. That's 7 points of movement, and that's fantastic.
Yeah. And that's really what we're doing, right? Is we're bringing awareness to it so people can handle it differently. So if I'm the abandonment person and she's the engulfment person, and there's a dispute, I know I need to give her a little time and space.
Yes.
She knows eventually I need to talk and feel close again at some point. So there needs to be something.
Craig, you may have to wait a month to be able to connect with her in a real way again.
Well, hopefully not, but
right?
But
right?
Yeah,
Wait a minute, I wanted to do that.
No, but I think the point is you need to, if you're aware of this abandonment engulfment and where you fall on the spectrum, then you can handle these situations differently. You're not going to eradicate it, but you can manage it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And I meant the month thing just now. And I said that a little bit for shock value for you in the moment, because, I mean, that's and your reaction's genuine, right? Like, that's hard. I hope not.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, it is.
That's tough.
It really, really, really is. But you know what? If you're an engulfment person, what you got to kind of realize is you need to freaking stay in the conversation.
Yeah, true. Hopefully it doesn't take a month, but.
And hopefully, and if it is a month for you, and the next time you have an argument, cut that in by a quarter.
Yeah.
And give yourself 3 weeks and force yourself to go back to the table.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're talking about the next day. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you love that person and you understand that's how they're wired, then you give a little grace, right? I don't want to have this conversation. If you love that person, then you give a little grace. I don't want to go talk to this person, but I'm going to because they need that, because they're an abandonment person.
Yes.
My God, I think I'm going to die if I don't talk about this issue. But I know that you're an engulfment person and you need a little space, so I'm going to give it to you.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's
grace and compassion can come in when you really understand on an advanced level. Hear that now, though. When on an advanced level, the other person's insecurities and how they operate. That, boy, opens up all kinds of wonderful doors for a healthy relationship. I wish I could highlight that better in some way. But it's also really hard to do when you're hot.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to the emotional control. You got to develop that so that you can step outside of the situation, calm yourself down, and realize what has to be done.
Yes. Yes. Here's a cool part that we do. So, letter E here is recognize the reality of what I call abandonment and engulfment insecurity skills. I'm going to leave it alone for right now because I think I said that earlier in the show. F. Here's something really important that I do with people in a therapy office in marital and couples counseling is name it, right? Put a name to the cycle. You know, it's really, really cool and important when you can identify it and then you come up with a name and you and your partner agree on the name for the cycle, and then you can talk about it, the pronoun, referring to a terrible place that you get into that you don't want to be in and that you can get out of when you get into it. You follow that?
Yeah. So you're saying give the cycle a name.
You know what my favorite one is?
You're using the well.
Yeah, you know what my favorite one is?
What?
Dude, there was this older Southern black couple that I was working with one day, and it was so cool because, and I know we're going over a little bit. We're going to come to a close. I got three more points on what happens in a therapy cycle, but this is a cool show, and we won't want to short it out at all. So they were kind of naming their cycles, and they're like, "How about the well?" I'm like, "The well." But you can think about it, an old Southern black culture, and they may not have had running water when they were younger and whatnot, right? And can you imagine a scarier place?
Yeah.
Bugs and spiders, and you can't get out of this thing, and it's dark, and it's dank, and it's cold.
Yeah.
Oh,
man. That reminds me of poor Stephanie Fast, who got thrown into a well.
Oh, my God. I know, right?
Yeah.
I know.
You could replace the W with an H too, and that'd be a good way to name it.
Actually, that's it. Yes,
because it can be hell, right?
It is absolutely hell on earth.
Yes.
So a hurricane, a tornado. We named ours a cyclone, and you know when you can name it, it's cool because then you could say like, hey, hey Craig, have you gone into that hurricane, man? Are you got some storms brewing? I mean, what's going on? And he'd be like, oh my God, I didn't realize that. Yeah, you know what I do? I'm sorry. Because you got a name, and you know what the cycle is, you know how it works, and then you get better at getting the heck out of it. Apply realization in self with current events and arguments. So again, it's a little bit of the realization in actual arguments and events that are going on. Come back to this because this is the issue. The event isn't. And if you realize that, and we work with that in therapy to identify that, then you're going to be much more able at managing it. And it's a similar same thing, G&H, right? Apply the new cycle. We work in therapy to figure out, what are the things that you're dealing with, and let's apply this new cycle to something else. And sometimes to get a little bit of success, let's say I'll have somebody that's really good at dealing with finances anyway, and we're really struggling, we're not getting the new cycles of patterns behavior together very well, and we're dealing with them, and we go to something that you do kind of well anyway, which is finances, and you can apply that. Dave Ramsey does this. You know what I'm saying, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What's he call him? Do you remember?
The free spirit and
the nerd.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He names them.
Yeah.
Free spirit is the engulfment people.
Yeah.
The nerd, us, we're the nerds. It's abandonment. That's what I think it directly relates to in his program.
It's perfect. It really is.
Yeah. After the new cycles are developed, get more advanced now and apply all these things, either couples counseling, right? Apply all the things in earlier couples counseling. And what I mean by that is earlier, the things I tried to do with before I dealt with the cycles. Now you can apply couples counseling communication skills. Now you can apply the love languages. Now you can apply conflict resolution and go through a series of steps to manage this big conflict that you're in. Now you apply all of these things that marriage counseling books have been writing about forever. But now you can do them because you're freaking grounded and out of your cycle, see? But if you try to do those things earlier on in the therapy relationship, you're screwed. You're absolutely screwed. I told you about my couple that came to me one time, right? And this will ring a bell, I'm sure, because I talked about it before. The guy and the girl are in my office, and the guy's like, hey, this is good. And talking about this issue, and she gets upset. She says, well, I don't know. There's this issue. And he says, well, I don't know. When you do that, and she goes, well, you get in. And boom, she stands up. She walks out to the office and leaves. And he's looking at me, and I'm looking at like, wow, this is like a year into doing therapy, man. I'm like, wow. He's like, that's I'm really glad we're here, man. I really am glad we're here.
After she was gone, he said that?
He said she did. He said, do you think that I really want to keep our marriage together and stuff? Think if he's the engulfment or the abandonment, right? I really want to keep our marriage together here and all. And do you think you can keep her in the room next time? Now, if you're out there and hearing this show somewhere or somebody, the answer is yes, I can now, maybe a little better, because we ain't going to have that conversation they were having. We're not even going to have that conversation.
Well, you probably don't have statistics on this either, but do you think that your success rates in marriage counseling have increased since you started?
Yeah, I don't have any way of knowing, but I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
My anecdotal experience of this is that absolutely. And funny you should ask. Somewhere in my show notes here, I lost it and missed it. I think I had it earlier on somewhere. It doesn't matter. You can Google it. Google divorce rates. Don't do it now. Don't worry, we got to wrap up. But if you Google divorce rates, you're going to find that it's gone down somewhere around 0.25%.
We talked about this. The millennials are driving
We
it.
did. They are, but Craig, when I did this search the other day for this to reinvigorate what I was thinking about, I saw more, and I can't describe it, but I saw more than just the millennials.
Really?
I did. Older people are still divorcing more, like the baby boomers and stuff, the rates and stuff, but people are divorcing less when they get older. Right? There's more maturity going on. They're staying single longer, and they're coming to premarital counseling. Your experience of your dude, I think, is fantastic. You came to a marriage seminar single. I mean, we're seeing stuff like that, man.
That's interesting, man.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
It's fantastic because marriage is a fundamental part of our families, which is a fundamental part of our culture, which is a fundamental part of a lot of crap we got going on, I think, nowadays. Stability and emotional management. So, to wrap up what we do in my therapy office, I wrote it in all bold. You want to steal my thunder? What did I write? Letter J, all bold on the back of the sheet there.
Ultimate goal is to develop emotional safety while having an intimately close union.
Right.
Both people actually want this.
Exclamation point. So elusive, folks out there. I know you're oftentimes maybe listening to this episode about marriage and struggling with your marriage and fearful that you're not going to stay together. I got hope for that out there. I know that people can recover from affairs. I know people can recover from even domestic violence in some crazy ways. We can deal with being able to be married when you feel the least amount of hope. I told you, Craig, I feel like people have been in their worst emotional states when they feel their relationship to their spouse is ending. And so there may be some people feeling really bad out there. Will it happen? I have no idea. You can only do your part. It does take two to tango in therapy. It does take two to get well in a relationship. No figure that, right? But there's hope. There is absolutely hope on such an important issue. I hope we did a good job out there for you. If you're in any kind of distress in marriage, I really want to suggest that you don't freaking wait like usually people do. 9th inning, down by 7 runs, 2 outs, count 3-2, and you're going to come to me and ask, what can I do to keep my wife in the room? Come early, come get things checked out, go find a professional. Talk about Gottman when you go. Talk about emotion-focused therapy. It is the single most important thing I feel like in marital counseling. I feel strongly about that. But go get help, go reach out, and go get this thing dealt with, because marriages that work really well, or even marginally well, are really, 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 really cool and rewarding.
Yeah, and let me just say, man, we've got a lot of shows on marriage.
We do.
We've got shows about surviving betrayal and just different topics on marriage. And if you go to our website, throughatherapistguys.com, we've added a podcast categories drop-down box on there. It's right under the main graphic on the right-hand side. And if you click down on that arrow, marriage and family is an option. And so if you select that, it will list all the episodes that Chris and I have done that relate to marriage.
There's several.
So there's a lot. There's a lot in there, and these are some of our most downloaded episodes.
Yeah.
So if you folks have missed any of them or just listening to us for the first time and want to go back, then that's how you can find the shows specifically related to marriage. And I would encourage you to go listen to those.
And we're going to have more. I mean, that's not an issue we're going to abandon by any measure, to use a pun. Yeah, see how I did that?
Yeah, that was good.
We're not going to abandon it, man. You're important to us. You're important. I'll listen to you. All right, man. You got closing thoughts and ideas?
I just want to say I've enjoyed the conversation. And like I said, this is probably my biggest takeaway from the 2 years we've been doing this show is this little segment on EFT. I enjoy it. I'm not married at the moment, but I can see the benefit of this, and I can see it in other, like I said before, in other relationships that I'm in with children and friends and people in my mastermind. And it's really been an interesting topic to discuss.
Fantastic. And I hope we did a good job. Some of it's redundant. If you listen to this one, the only show in the history of Through a Therapist's Eyes that you do not need to listen to is episode 11. The rest of them,
fair game.
Y'all have a great week. Stay safe out there, and we will talk to you soon in the Through a Therapist's Eyes National Tribe. Take care.